Hello and welcome to the Southern Manx Pilot Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the greatest football club in the world and its fans, Manchester United. This week we'll be talking about the start to the season, including results, transfer business and all things United. With me this episode, a fellow Manc, Nick Grant.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, Nick, how you
Nice
doing?
to be here. Yeah, good, thanks. Buzzing. It's been a great start to the season.
Yeah. What do you make of it so far? What's your initial impressions?
Yeah, well, what's not to like? 3 games, 3 wins, top of the table, no goals conceded. Obviously, we did this last year, won the first 3 games, but
Yep.
as we get into our topics, I think there's much to be excited about.
Yeah, so didn't start too positive though, I guess. First game was the Super Cup defeat to Real Madrid. What do you think about that one?
There's no shame in losing to Real Madrid. If we're being honest, they're the best team in the planet, only team to retain the Champions League. There's no shame in losing 2-1 to Real Madrid. Yes, we probably were the second best team on the day, but we had chances. Lukaku missed an open goal, 1 or 2 others. I come out of that with more positives than negatives.
Yeah, interesting you say that because watching that game, initially I thought that this was exposing our kind of the same old problems over the last couple of seasons. I must admit, watching Toni Kroos in the middle of the midfield dictating things sort of stood out to me. But hopefully, we won't come up against that kind of threat too often in the league. Are you worried about that? That we haven't strengthened in that area?
I think we strengthened in a way that we were always going to strengthen in, and that's Matic. Mm-hmm. You're right to point out Kroos and the Modric factor, but we've gone down a different route, a Jose Mourinho route.
Yeah.
Tall, 6 foot, strong, athletic midfielders, Matic and Pogba. That is, whether we like it or not, that's Man United for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and you mentioned Pogba there. I think he's had a great start to the season. I think if we look at the first 3 games, so the 2 back-to-back 4-0s and then the latest result against Leicester of a 2-0 victory. What stood out most in those 3 games, do you think?
Obviously, when you win 4-0, that's gonna stick out in a very difficult and competitive Premier League. But I know the fans and myself, the counter-attacking football, the pace in the play, the options from the bench, the fact that you probably couldn't predict the best 11 at the moment. I think 99% of United fans would have probably started the season with Herrera instead of Mata.
Yeah.
There's probably an argument for Martial over Rashford or Mkhitaryan. So I think it's gone back to the good old days of unpredictability. And if we're the fans and we're the closest to it and we can't predict it, then it's obviously going to be tough for teams like West Ham and Swansea and Leicester to predict who we're going to play and how we're going to go about playing. So it's exciting. Not to get carried away yet. Anything could happen over this international break. Eric Bailly could come back from God knows where he is, Gambia.
Is that where he is, Gambia?
Yeah. So it's been a fantastic start, but that's all it is, a start.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned there about lineups. Throughout the summer, I kind of expected us to shape up with a 4-3-3. After Herrera's fantastic season last year, obviously Pogba needs to play, and bringing in Matic, I thought that was the obvious way to go, but doesn't seem to have started that way. Do you think that's something that he will revert to for tougher tests?
Yeah, I mean, come on, this is Mourinho we're talking about here. Away at one of the big boys, and one of that forward line doesn't play. Mata doesn't play. Mkhitaryan perhaps doesn't play, and like you say, Herrera or even Fellaini will come into that starting lineup. Then, you know, we're not going to try and pull the wool over everyone's eyes here on this podcast. I think everybody knows that that's how United will play against the big boys. But I think credit to Jose Mourinho, he didn't take the friendlies seriously. He wasn't disappointed about losing to Barcelona or beating Real Madrid over in America, because he said on day one, this is to try out different systems, and we tried a 3 at the back, we tried a 4-3-3, we tried this current formation, and he seems to have landed on one that he's liked. And it looked now, looking back over the last couple of months of pre-season, it looked like almost the perfect pre-season. Super Cup result aside, I don't think we could have asked for much better summer.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk transfer business in the next section, because I'm keen to pick up on who came in. Most likely Lindelof, who hasn't featured so far this season. But one man who arrived last summer, who's really started the season well, Henrikh Mkhitaryan, the Armenian. I saw a stat that said he was 1 assist away from equaling Philippe Coutinho's season record of assists. Fantastic start, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that says about Philippe Coutinho or the £130 million quoted, but you've only got to watch Mkhitaryan play for an extended period of time to know just how good a player he is. Even listening to Paul Merson the other day, he puts him in the top 5 players in the Premier League. He's a great player. And you mentioned there about Lindelof not playing at the moment, but you can draw comparisons between Lindelof and Mkhitaryan, the way that Jose's handled both players' arrival into the Premier League. And, you know, I've got no doubts that Victor Lindelof will come and become a good centre-back.
Yeah.
And the reason why I have no doubts is looking at how Jose Mourinho managed Henrikh Mkhitaryan. So, yeah.
Yeah, and on the theme of scoring goals, the big Belgian, Lukaku, he started well. Do you think is that a surprise to you, or fully expected?
Fully expected. I mean, you know as well as I do, and people listening to this show will grow to know my love for Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah, that's true.
It's made no secret over the last couple of years he was the man I wanted at the club, even through all the nonsense of getting linked to Morata. It just didn't make sense. The way we played did not make sense to bring in a player like Morata. It made perfect sense to bring in a Lukaku, then throw in the Pogba friendship, throw in the fact that he's been doing it for years in the Premier League, throw in the fact he's only 24 years of age and only going to get better. I'm delighted. I'm delighted with that sign, and he's going to be United's number 9 for the next 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah. Again, we'll touch on him again in the transfer section. Just before we move on, the forgotten man, Phil Jones, has come in ahead of the 30 odd million pound signing Lindelof. I know we're kind of breaking him in gently, but I've been really impressed with Big Phil. I'm hoping that he can stay fit for this season. What do you make of him so far?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Sir Alex Ferguson said Phil Jones has the potential to be the best Manchester United player ever. Not one of the best, but the best.
I think he called out Duncan Edwards as a
I think comparisons were made.
comparison, didn't he? Which I know our friend Jamie Carragher did not agree with, but there you go.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Not a lot of people would have agreed with any sort of comparison to Phil Jones and the word great. You know, whether it's Duncan Edwards or any other centre back that you can think of. You know, Jaap Stam, Vidic, Rio Ferdinand. Even United fans, I'm on the forums every single day, and some of the grief that Smalling and Jones get, it's obvious he hasn't built the fans' trust over the amount of years he's been here.
Yeah.
But the two very different players there, Phil Jones and Mike Smalling, that
Smaldini.
yeah, that Jones has the ability, but never seems to complete a season. And even Mourinho said, I think a couple of days ago in his press conference, that he's now got a slight ankle injury, I believe, Phil Jones.
Oh, wow.
Kept him out of England's first training session, but he was expected to still be fit for Friday. But the ability was always there with Phil Jones. Smalling, on the other hand, for me, the jury's still out. Is Smalling, when Lindelof is eased in, what does that do for Chris Smalling? Is he third choice, fourth choice? For me, it's Phil Jones every single day, but obviously I understand where people will always have a question mark over Phil Jones until he does it over a 38-game season.
Yeah, that and the faces that he pulled. I mean, some of those, wow, they are amazing. But yeah, I agree with your point. I think Smalling, for me, he doesn't look like a footballer. He looks very awkward on the ball, and you can't. I mean, comparisons with Rio Ferdinand, they're just chalk and cheese in my mind. I think Ferdinand could do it with the ball at his feet, but also, you know, going back the other way, he could read the game as well. I think Smalling for me is the one that will lose out, and especially with Phil Jones's early season form. But yeah, I think that combination, first 3 league games, has been. Look, hey, they're not the best teams that we played, but
you can only beat what's in front of you, and we've kept 3 clean sheets.
3 clean sheets, you know, that's what I'm looking at. Solid foundations. Cool. Okay.
Probably cut that bit out.
Right, on with the show. Next topic on the agenda, transfer business. A hot topic at every club, obviously, but when you're the biggest club in the world, it's even bigger. Nick, what do you think of our business? Firstly, I want to talk about who left the club this summer.
Sure, I mean, there's some that make sense.
Yep.
Rooney to Everton made sense in every sense of the word. Going back to his boyhood club, not playing for us, 300 grand off the wage bill.
Yep.
Just, it was the perfect time to say goodbye to a club legend.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. I've got one eye on Fosu Mensah at Palace. He's made the most interceptions in the Premier League to date.
Yep. Holland call up as well.
Holland call up. I think that is the move that made the most sense. As long as we don't get lost in the Chelsea way of doing things, of when these players go on loan, they never seem to ever return.
Yeah.
I know people at the club have got high hopes for Timbo.
Mm-hmm. Not the United way, is it? Not the United way. If they've got something, then they're usually given a chance. I mean, even people, another one who left it this summer, Adnan Januzaj, after a bit of promise under David Moyes, drifted kind of off the radar under Van Gaal, and has actually left the club, gone to Sociedad this summer. I think generally, if you're good enough, you do get your chance at United, but you have to grab it and make the most of it, which I don't think he did really.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that, and it doesn't seem so long ago that Paris Saint-Germain were offering us, 30, 40 million for Januzaj?
They should have snapped it up.
So, good luck to the lad. It looked like a case of too much too soon for him. Looking back, he was probably the one shining light under the Moyes era.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should have eased him in more gently. Perhaps he shouldn't have had the number 11 shirt, only for the 11 shirt to be taken away off from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good luck to him. I don't think there's anyone at Man United that's looking at the way we've started and gone, Adnan could have done this. So
yeah.
For me, it's the right decision.
Good point. So a couple of the other ones that I wanted to touch on, mainly youth players, but Josh Harrop made his Man United debut last game of the season at home to Crystal Palace. In an eye-catching debut, scored. Looked like like he had a lot of potential. He was let go in the summer and joined Preston North End down in the Football League. Was that a surprise to you?
No, not as soon as I heard his contract was up. For me, it just seemed like a shop window game. We prioritised the Europa League final, and we need to put people in a dead rubber against Palace. They weren't going down, we weren't going anywhere in the table. It looked like a shop window game to me.
Yeah.
United generally don't let contracts run down. So if we saw something in him, or if Mourinho saw something in him, I think we would have done a deal earlier. From what I'm hearing, the lad kind of knew that he probably wasn't going to force his way into United's first team anytime soon, and decided to go and play some football. Fair play to the lad. He could have stuck around the under-23s, picking up a decent wage, walking around town claiming he plays for Man United, and never would have improved as a footballer. He's gone down and slug it out at Preston.
We'll see what happens then, I guess.
Yes,
we'll
definitely.
see what happens. A couple of other loans that happened as well in the summer. Sam Johnson, the backup keeper, joined Steve Bruce down at Aston Villa, and also Cameron Borthwick-Jackson, another of the Louis van Gaal Academy, joined Leeds on loan. To be honest, I think both look like their futures are away from Man United. If I'm 100% honest, I don't think we've seen enough of them just yet to say anything different. And then I guess the big one that kind of one of the first moves of the summer was Ibrahimovic leaving, which has been reversed in the last week. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail shortly. So total out business was just the Januzaj transfer fee, so didn't recoup much in terms of funds this summer, just under 8 mil. On to the ins. So firstly, we touched on him earlier, but the Iceman, Victor Lindelof, haven't seen much of him yet.
Yeah, I mean, for those that follow United and their transfer business, you always hear about this list. A list of players.
A list of 4, wasn't it, this summer?
Yeah, a list of 4. But also I'm going back to the Van Gaal and the Moyes era. You hear about this infamous list that United scouts have drawn up, and ultimately they get their man eventually. Ander Herrera was on the list.
Yeah.
Luke Shaw was on the list. And if you look back to January, it became apparent that Lindelof was on the list and he would become a Manchester United player sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It's probably happened sooner, if we're being honest, because I think one of them, the Spanish clubs, was also sniffing around.
Okay.
And that may have forced our hand, similar to how Bebe forced our hand once.
Yeah.
But hopefully that's the only comparison we'll make between Lindelof and Bebe.
Let's hope so. Never watched him, did he, Fergie? Never watched him.
Yeah, exactly.
Signed on videos. rumours of him playing in the Homeless World Cup.
Yeah, I suppose getting footage of the Homeless World Cup is difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, from all accounts, Victor Lindelof was going to become a Manchester United player. I'm excited to see how the deal pans out. He is starting in the Champions League against Basel because Bailly and Phil Jones are suspended still.
Do you think he will start over?
Yeah. So
over Blind.
Yeah, it will be Lindelof and Smalling. I'm quite certain about that.
Okay.
In Basel, and then it's only really sitting out the Everton game before he probably plays against Burton.
Yeah.
So United fans haven't got long to wait to actually see him a bit more in action of the Iceman.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned Everton just there. Obviously, we've done a bit of business with them this summer. So Rooney rejoined his boyhood club. We signed their number 9, top goal scorer over the last few seasons in Romelu Lukaku. But just talking about centre halves, one name that we were also linked with was Michael Keane, obviously former Red. Are you surprised we didn't go in for him?
No, I'm not, because I think he would have come in the Lindelof role of you're probably going to be number 3 or 4 choice at the moment until you prove your worth. And I think it was probably more of a Michael Keane choice to go to Everton to play, rather than to come to United and sit on the bench.
Yeah, I think if he comes in at United, he doesn't start the first 3 games. He doesn't get in the England team. He's had a decent start at Everton, hasn't he? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So second signing of the summer was, we just touched on him there, Romelu Lukaku. And I know we have talked about him already, but he was the man, wasn't he? He's the man that you wanted in this summer. And Jose got his man. One thing I did think about this deal that maybe wouldn't have let it happen in the end was the Chelsea history, but didn't seem to get in the way.
No, I think... I mean, this is obviously a Manchester United podcast, and I know that we're probably going to talk about other clubs later on in the show, but it seemed to me that Conte was flexing his muscles and wanted to get Lukaku, whereas Abramovich probably wasn't up for spending 90 million on a player that he once sold.
That's a good point, yeah. I saw an interesting theory that United used the Morata deal as, to quote Fergie, as a smokescreen for Lukaku. So interesting how that kind of panned out, because I mean the lad even dyed his hair red, which is an unusual move. But again, I think on balance, although Morata signed from Real Madrid, I think he's started the season pretty well and had a good goals to games ratio for them. I'm very excited about Lukaku, and I think we've made the right decision there.
Yeah, Morata's not a bad player. This is not going to be a biased Manchester United podcast where everything we do is right and everything every other club does is wrong. Morata is a very good player, but I think if you look at systems and how United, it's so obvious how we're going to play with the personnel we needed, I don't think Morata was the man. And whether or not there's some sort of smokescreen conspiracy, I don't know. In this day and age, I think agents hold the power. As soon as it became apparent that Abramovich was not going to spend 90 million on someone he sold for 28 million, he's a businessman at the end of the day. I think that's when Jose thought,
boom,
strike while the iron's hot.
And then the other Chelsea-linked player, Nemanja Matic. He has also started the season well. Looks like everything we needed. A Michael Carrick, perhaps, of 10 years ago. Thoughts on him, Nick?
Great signing. I remember when we were being linked with Matic and speaking to other United fans, and I remember saying to them, this is probably the signing we need, but it might not be the signing you want. Because nowadays football transfers are silly. If it's not 100 million, no one wants to know, unless it's some sort of wonder kid that someone has found on FIFA or Football Manager.
Yeah.
People like Nemanja Matic are not classed as fashionable signings.
Or they're English.
Yeah. But for me, like you raised a great point. How foolish would we have been going into the season with a 36-year-old Michael Carrick with no one else as backup?
Yeah.
So, for me, I'll say it again, it was the signing we need. It might not have been a signing everyone want, but how quickly has he shut everyone up?
Yeah.
Fantastic business.
I mean, he's done his performances, on the pitch, he's really kind of stood out, hasn't he? He's broken up the player. I think it was it might have been the Lukaku goal at home in the first game of the season where he broke up the play, fed it to Rashford. We were on the counter. Rashford put it through and that was it. I mean, one thing that really has, stood out for me was the counter attack. And with him at the spine of that team, he's given them the platform to go on. And I think that's what Mourinho will do. I think this summer was all about strengthening the spine, and he has done exactly that. And one bit of news, I guess we can't ignore, was Zlatan Ibrahimovic re-signing. Funny that he left and then came back, but I'm happy with that. I guess you are as well, Nick.
I've got mixed thoughts. Mixed thoughts about Zlatan Ibrahimovic coming back. Look, it's obvious he's got a great respect for the club. The way he talks about it. I mean, when he left Paris Saint-Germain, considering what he did there and how he helped raise that profile, there was always little snippets coming out, whether it was from the club or from Zlatan, that something wasn't quite right there. And that's never happened between Zlatan, Mourinho and Manchester United. No. So there is a mutual respect there. Obviously, this is probably his last payday.
Yeah,
We're probably one of the only clubs that will give him the payday that he wants and that he thinks he deserves. But from like a competitive spin, I guess, he probably thinks this is his last chance to win the Premier League.
Yeah.
The guy is a legend of the game. He's won, 6 or 7 different league titles. He got his hands on the Europa League last year. The guy is a legend of the game. For me, I think there's a few more questions. It's hard coming back from that sort of injury. Does he come back from that the same player?
I think he's a big enough character to do so, and I think Lukaku, you know what, has he played in the Premier League and the Champions League and the FA Cup at this level, at this pressure throughout a whole season? No, he hasn't, and he's 24. And I think to be able to bring Zlatan in, in some of these big games, to give Lukaku a bit of a break, to give us a different option. What a fantastic option to have from the bench. Ibrahimovic, like you said, legend of the game. So I think as the fourth signing, it's not kind of what I expected, I guess. We were rumoured with the lad at Inter, Perisic, but I think Martial's form has kind of put that one to bed.
Well, I think there's two things for the Perisic one. If we wanted him, we would have got him. Okay, Inter Milan, I think, wanted between 40 and 50 million euros. We bid 30, knowing that Inter Milan needed 30 million to pass financial fair play. So we were never going to offer more than 30 million when we know a club needs 30 million to pass FFP.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't deemed good enough for Inter Milan. And whilst all of this negotiations were happening, Real Madrid dangled that little Bale carrot, like they seem to do every year, that he might be available. And just like every year, we seem to think Bale's coming to Man United. And I think that's what happened with Perisic. If Man United can afford to pay 40, 50 million for even Perisic, that was never ever a question, never ever a problem. But as soon as we couldn't get them down closer to 30 million, and Real Madrid dropped that Bale carrot, and the Martial and Rashford form from the left, suddenly meant we probably wasn't going to make that fourth signing. And I'm actually, for once, happy we haven't made that fourth signing. I don't think we need that fourth signing. We don't need even Perisic.
No.
If you look at his goals and assist record in Serie A, you cannot tell me that Martial or Rashford, given a full season, won't match or better that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be absolutely criminal to sign another. He's getting on. He's 28, 29, I think, for that kind of money. When you've got someone like Tony Marshall sitting there, ready to play, and I think good luck to that lad. I think he's proven himself. Well, he's had a great start to the season. Look, let's not get carried away. He had a great start to the season, and you can only hope that he can continue that, and it puts that one fully to bed. Just to recap or summarise on the transfer business, any gaps for you still to fill?
I think a lot of it depends on how Luke Shaw and or Marcus Rojo come back from their injuries. I think when you put your so-called best 11, and I hate doing this because you know that it's likely to change, but at the moment Blin's probably the left back because Darmian isn't. He isn't the left back everyone thought he would be. He's an Italian defender, but I think that's why the form of Martial Rashford suffered last year, because he wasn't willing to get up the wing and help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Blind is a left back. So I think when people look at the Man United team, he sticks out as the weak link. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Blind's a good footballer. He is a good player. And as Van Gaal would say, he's a multifunctional player.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're a Man United fan, or even not a Man United fan, you would probably look at that left side, that left back. But we invested a lot in this in young Luke Shaw. We invested a lot of money into him. And Mourinho, news coming out that Mourinho does think that his mentality's changed. Perhaps he does want it.
Yeah.
So,
latest news suggests that he's going to sign a contract extension, which I for one would be happy with. I think, like you said, on Blind, he probably is one of the weaker links in that side now with the reinforcements that we've brought in. He's probably one of the more sort of dying breeds of the Van Gaal era, where he's a technical, like you said, multifunctional, good reader of the game. But is he a Jose powerful, player like your likes of Pogba and Matic and Lukaku? No, he isn't. So yeah, I think, is Luke Shaw that? I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Pardon the pun. We'll have to see on that one. Any other gaps for you?
No. Like I said, I'm really happy with the transfer window. Look, I was delighted when Lukaku came in. Lindelof was, as I said, was obvious since January. And Matic, we need to replace Carrick and to weaken our rivals and get a position that we needed to fill in one move.
Classic Jose.
Is classic Jose. I'm delighted with this window. I think it's good. I still think there's some dead wood.
Yeah, but the likes of I know you're going to say Ashley Young. I know you're not the biggest fan of young Jesse Lingard. Any other deadwood?
Yeah, for me, you probably keep Lingard because he can play across that front 3 or 4. But yeah, come on, let's be honest. He's not 19. He's 24 now.
Yeah, I know. I say he's young Jesse Lingard.
He's at his peak.
I'm still waiting for him to really burst onto the scene. To go and get that run of games where he finds the net, or it just hasn't happened. It reminds me of kind of someone like Walcott down at Arsenal, when you're waiting for him to really sort of kick on. And obviously, I think he's about 35 now, so hopefully we see something from Lingard before then. If not, he can be Pogba's best bud, and that'll be fine as well.
Yeah, I mean, they can make as many dance videos as they like in the changing room. I'd still keep him around because, like you say, there's still a question mark whether or not he can do it. But for me, someone like Ashley Young, who's probably on 110 grand a week. I know money doesn't seem to be a thing at Man United, but I do still think there's a duty as a club to look at these players, similar to what we did with Rooney, and say, hang on, economically this doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Ashley Young would get in the shadow 11.
No, I'm not sure why we would keep both players. I think you either play Lingard for 100 grand a week or you play Young for 100 grand a week, but you don't put one of them on the bench and one of them completely at home. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't sit well for me. But, you know, Ashley Young will be... He's 31, 32 now. There's probably not a lot of takers for him. But for me, overall, I'm delighted with the window. We're probably going off a bit of a tangent here. I think it's overall, I think it's a very, very solid window.
Thank you, Nick.
Alex Ferguson, they put you through the mill into injury time, almost lost the cup, and you win it. The new European champions, the treble, the dream come true for you.
Oh, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Football, bloody hell. But they never give in, and that's the winner.
Absolutely
So proud of
fantastic.
him.
I mean, you must have thought it'd gone there with just a few seconds left. You sent Schmeichel up.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about P went up on his own.
Did he? Right.
But anyway, fantastic. I'm so proud of my players.
Well done, Alex. You better get back there and celebrate.
Right, topic number 3. We like trebles. We're going to talk about the 2 big cup draws that took place last week. The Champions League, obviously, and don't forget about the League Cup. We're going to talk about that as well. So firstly, the big one, back in the Champions League after an absence last season. Benfica, Basel and CSKA Moscow. What do you think about that group?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. And I think in the Champions League nowadays, the amount of money that's in world football, European football, and the amount of top clubs that we could have drawn, to come out with Benfica, Bal, CSKA Moscow, I think we're laughing. I do think we're laughing. I know that there's
some
couple
history there, isn't there?
Yeah,
Well,
there's a couple of
history.
caveats. Obviously, as soon as the draw was made and you got Moscow, the first thing you look at is when are we in Moscow? And I think that's worked out okay because you don't want to be going to a Moscow winter on -10. So that's okay. And like you correctly say, the last time we was in a group that contained Benfica and Bal, we didn't qualify. I don't think that's Mourinho. I think that was when we got a little bit complacent under Fergie. I don't think Jose getting us, he made it so clear last year that we needed to be in the Champions League. It was almost from day one he was bemoaning the fact that we wasn't in the Champions League, and now we are. He will navigate this group.
Yeah, definitely. And just sort of a reminder, I guess, for fixture-wise, we start off at home to Basel. So that's in a week or so's time, 12th of September. Then we go away. So this is the only tricky bit to navigate, I think. Away in Moscow. Then the next fixture is another away fixture at Benfica. And that's sandwiched in between away trips at Southampton, Liverpool, and obviously Huddersfield have had a good start to the season. I'm less worried about that, but in between Liverpool, the Liverpool game is probably the toughie. I think if we can come out of those first 3 games with, you'd say, between 6 and 9 points, I think we'd be pretty happy with that start.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but you want to qualify as soon as possible. And looking at how Jose manages his games and how he would have already looked at how quickly can I get this done? How quickly can I be done with this group? What we don't want to be doing is getting all the way to December the 5th at home to CSKA Moscow, still needing something to qualify when that game is sandwiched in between away at Arsenal on December the 2nd and home to City on December the 9th. Because then for 3 games, you probably can't rest your players. So Mourinho would want to be qualified one way or another before that December the 5th game. So then, like you say, you're really looking at getting your points on the board on the first 3 games. And I know 2 of them games are away, but that's the Champions League. You've got to go away to these teams and get something. I know our European away form is a bit patchy. Hopefully the confidence from last year, Europa Cup win, is something we can build on. But I'm really looking to have to be qualified, and I keep saying qualified, and I'll come back to that in a second, by December the 5th because of how important them 2 league games are.
Yeah. Again, to mention the fixtures, so it's Basel, Moscow away, Benfica away, then it's Benfica at home, so you've got the usual double header. Between those 2, you've got Spurs and Chelsea. Then it's away at Basel, and then we finish at home to Moscow. So, I don't think it's definitely not the hardest draw, but I think there's some banana skins there if we don't think things through. I think this is where you need to start making sure we're using this squad properly, keeping people happy, and fielding the strongest 11 that we can in the space of time that we need to. You mentioned there winners or qualified. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, this year you got to remember that there's 5 English teams in the Champions League. So you've got obviously your champions Chelsea, who you'd expect to qualify from their group.
Yeah.
City, who you'd expect to qualify from their group. Liverpool, who you'd expect to qualify from their group.
Yeah.
Us, who you'd expect to qualify from our group. And Spurs is probably between them and Dortmund.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even in the next round, you cannot face an English team.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference this year whether you finish first or second.
I see where you're going, yeah. Okay.
So I think, everyone would love to top the group because if you don't top the group, it's Arsenal syndrome. You seem to get Bayern Munich can get dicked 5-1.
Yeah.
But I think this year, bearing in mind, you can't go and draw another British team in the next round.
Yeah.
I think it's all about qualification this year.
And who do you see being our toughest test? So I think apart from the away nature of travelling to Moscow, I don't see them as a threat. I think Basel, they're kind of a bit of a bogey team. I think I don't know that of them of being a threat. So you're looking at the likes of Benfica, but I mean they've been massively weakened over the last couple of summers with people leaving. I mean, City got their keeper, we got their centre half. I know the one of the wingers went to left Atletico Madrid last summer. Gayshan, yeah. So, I mean, I think on the surface of it, yes, it looks okay. Some banana skins, but I mean, you don't go and win the Europa League last summer and really sort of put your eggs in the Champions League basket if you're not going to push on. I mean, if you've got any hopes of getting something out of it, then you have to be really nailing that group, surely.
Yeah, definitely. I think we will top the group. I think we will win that group. But like I said, if we finish second in the group and we're still top of the league by December 5th,
well, we're in dreamland, really.
I'm not fussed one bit.
Considering obviously we've watched United over the years, had some great successes with Ferguson. Had the last sort of few seasons haven't quite been up to scratch. I mean, that's a topic for another day. But things are looking up. It's good, definitely a good start to the season. We're not get carried away, but look, let's see what happens. So the second cup draw last week, and let's not forget them. Burton Albion League Cup on the 20th of September at home. Thoughts on that one? I'm trying to think. Have we ever faced Burton Albion before? There's one for you, your statos listening.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. I'm sure there was a game. I seem to remember Fergie coming up against Nigel Clough. Not Brian Clough, sorry. No, Nigel Clough. Yeah, one of their Cloughs. I'm excited about this draw, and I'm probably going to upset a few people here. So just
excited about Burton Albion at home. Go on, Nick. Heard that one before.
Hear me out. It's not so much Burton Albion. It's the fact that this is the first silverware of the season. Because the final's in March.
Yeah, we're the holders as well.
February, March.
Don't forget that.
But also we know that Mourinho's a serial winner.
Yeah.
He is now level with Ferguson and Clough on 4 wins each.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, Clough's no longer with us. Ferguson's retired. Mourinho has a chance to go and be the outright record holder of this competition. He's always had a bit of a love affair with this one.
He has,
He's a serial winner. It's the first trophy of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And on my way over here, I was thinking to myself, what's really the difference now between this cup and the FA Cup?
Yeah, true.
And I know that there's a lot of traditionalists out there, and I know some people are like, it's the FA Cup, we grow up on this and everything like that. Look back over the last 10 years and the winners of the League Cup and the winners of the FA Cup. It's fairly similar.
Mm-hmm.
Can you define our season last year on a League Cup win, compare it to Arsenal's FA Cup win? I mean, it ain't done Arsenal much
No.
good.
I think it's not what it used to be. I think thinking back to the big sort of 3:00 Saturday kickoffs at Wembley, it was a much bigger showpiece, but it's just not. It doesn't got that feel anymore. I don't know if it's the new Wembley or the later kickoff times, or just the way the bigger clubs have approached it in the last few years. But yeah, I think thinking about it, 6 games on both sides. Obviously, League Cup, like I said, it's the first trophy up for grabs. I mean, with our squad, I hear a lot of other fans saying, you've got the best squad, you should be winning every trophy this season. I mean, that's quite a claim, and I don't believe it for a second, but I think the League Cup is one that Jose will go for again.
Yeah, 100%. And why wouldn't he? He's a serial winner. He's got a chance to take a record in his own name, which you would love. You can't tell me that if Wenger or Guardiola won the League Cup this year and nothing else, they could call that a successful season.
No.
So I think it's one of those things that Mourinho will just tick over, and I can see us going for this competition. I know it doesn't give much hope to Burton. I doubt there's many Burton Albion fans listening to this podcast.
If you are, hello,
get in touch. But I think Mourinho will take this competition very, very seriously, and I'm looking forward to it. I am. It's the first silverware of the season, and I really don't see much difference between that and the FA Cup anymore.
Good stuff. And just a reminder, that game is on the 20th of September, which is a Wednesday. So that is 3 weeks today. So we'll look forward to that one.
Okay, international break gets us a chance to reflect on the Premier League season as well as we take a pause from it. Look ahead, Paul Merson here to cast his eye on that. Merce, your top 4 in reverse order as it stands. How would you predict it?
I go Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City.
Man City to win it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is a Man United podcast, but the next section we want to talk about is our fellow clubs in the Premier League. So quite a interesting start, I guess you'd say, to the season. Obviously, we're top of the table at the moment. Good start for us. Nick, what surprised you? Who's stood out for you? Who's in trouble? Let's have a chat about that. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to predict who's in trouble, but I think Palace will go down.
Wow.
So Palace will go down. I think Brighton will go down, which is a shame. Southern Manx, but I think Brighton are in trouble. And then there's always someone that you don't think, will be in there. And for me, I'm already looking at teams like your Bournemouths and perhaps Newcastle. I know Newcastle's a massive club, but their first 11 suggests they're not. So for me, I've named 4 teams there. I think it's only 3 from them 4.
Wow. So the surprise for me there is there's no mention of Swansea and there's no mention of Huddersfield. Now, you could also argue Watford. They were kind of dragged into that last season, but Huddersfield only just come up. I mean, surely.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I like about Huddersfield is they've got a designated way of playing which they won't change. And when you go to Huddersfield, the fans have never been here before. You can just imagine, you can see it already, big clubs getting turned over by Huddersfield.
Yeah.
And also they did their transfer business early. They identified who they want. They
were shrewd, weren't they?
Yeah,
Shrewd.
Wagner's not doing any business tomorrow. He's got his feet up. He's done his business. I mentioned Palace because I think Frank de Boer's the worst signing of the season.
Wow. Big claim.
And I've mentioned Brighton because it's a nice club.
Yeah. You're not scared of going down to the Amex, are you?
Exactly. If you're a professional footballer and you said Monday night football away at Brighton or Monday night football away at Huddersfield, you know which one you want to play at.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the strange one, sitting there at the bottom of the table, we had them at the start of the season. West Ham, I expected a bit more from them. I mean, they got beaten by us. The latest fixture, they got beat by Newcastle, who again, I thought they looked pretty average in the games I've seen of them. But what's going wrong at West Ham? What do you think about that?
From an outsider looking in, it looks like the club has no soul. They've got a new home. I know you can't keep using that as an excuse, but it's not really their home. It's outside a shopping centre. The players they've brought in, I think Joe Hart gave an interview the other day saying ideally he wanted a permanent transfer somewhere. He couldn't get it, so he took a loan deal to West Ham.
Wow.
I think that was probably more City's camp. They didn't want to sell him to a rival, for instance, like a Liverpool.
Yeah.
So loan was probably the only option he had. But that's not a good mentality going into a season for you and your family when you know you're only going to be at a place for a year. Win, lose or draw, he's not there next year.
Yeah.
And that's your number one goalkeeper.
So who else did they bring? But Arnautovic was a big money move from Stoke. I know Jose mentioned him before as not having a great state of attitude. They signed Hernandez as well, obviously a fan's favourite Old Trafford, who actually looked their best player, I must admit, first game of the season. And Zabaleta, wasn't it, from City? But we'll see how that one plays out. So looking more towards the top of the table, you've got Liverpool, who on 7 points. They've announced a deal to sign the lad from Leipzig next season. So he's not joining until the end of next season. Naby Keita. They signed the Salah as well. Thoughts on Liverpool, Nick?
Yeah, Liverpool's... How I think about Liverpool will probably be summed up in the next 48 hours, depending on how that transfer window closes. Because for me, if they keep Coutinho and go and get Van Dijk, which is what they've been threatening him for months, then for me it's a good window. Because they needed a centre-half and they've kept their best player. Mm-hmm. If Barcelona take Coutinho for the stupid amount of money it is, and Southampton stand firm on Van Dijk, then for me it's not a good window.
Yeah.
And the same problems with Liverpool will exist, that they are dodgy on set pieces and they can't really defend too well. Don't get me wrong, they blitzed Arsenal. It's easy to get carried away with that 4-0 result. Same way that we're not getting carried away with our 4-0s.
Yeah.
It was a great performance by Liverpool against probably one of the worst Arsenal teams I've seen. So
yeah, well, again, we won't talk about them for too long. This is a Man United podcast, but for me, I can't see Coutinho leaving now. I think it's too late in the window. Obviously, we'll be summarising the transfer deadline day in our next podcast in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, I can't see him leaving. Elsewhere, obviously, the other rivals, City, decent start to them. I watched the game against Everton. I thought they kind of dug in there and got something out of that game where they'd been threatening to for the whole game. But thoughts on them? Spent a lot of money, mainly on fullbacks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, City, they look like they can be got at. Everton proved that. Bournemouth proved it to a degree. You have to give City credit in the fact that they got results out of both of them games, one way or another. I guess what you say about Man City is if you spend 200 to 250 million pounds a year, eventually you're going to get it right. And Pep's admitted himself he's under immense pressure. I think, again, the next 24 hours, if they get Alexis Sanchez, and it's looking like that will happen, suddenly I think City will have a lot of momentum and a lot of that fear factor. I do think the title will end up in Manchester one way or another. But right now, if you was to say who's the biggest threat to United season, I would say the Noisy Neighbours.
Yeah, I mean, that would be incredible firepower, wouldn't it? I mean, you've already got arguably one of the best centre forwards in world football in Sergio Aguero. I mean, that guy knows where the net is. You've got the young lad Jesus, is it? And then to add Alexis Sanchez into the mix, I mean, that would be quite something. Funny thing, they offered 50 million plus Raheem Sterling, but Arsenal are holding out for just the 50 million. So we'll see what happens there. I guess elsewhere, Arsenal, you touched on them. Dreadful start again to the season, 4-0 defeat. Got to beat at Stoke. They'd never win at Stoke. What's going on there? I think we've been saying Wenger out for the last however long, or the Arsenal fans have been saying that. He wins the FA Cup, gets a new two-year deal. What's going on?
Oh, I mean, you can't sack a manager 3 games into the season.
Of course not.
And you can't sack a manager 3 games into the season that's just won the FA Cup and signed a 2-year deal. The time to do it, and I said this at the time, the time to do it would have been after beating City in the FA Cup semi-final, because he could have gone to Wembley then and said, "This is my last game," and you know, it worked out well for him. It did work out well for him, but he played this absolute game with the media, the whole "will I, won't I" thing, and that was bizarre, and it backfired, and it's wound everybody up, because he said he signed, and he said there'd be changes, and there quite clearly hasn't been any changes. Their best 11 is so far behind United, City, Liverpool, maybe even Spurs, Chelsea's best 11 that it's hard to see how they come back from this with only 24 hours to go in the window.
Yeah, I mean, they're linked, again, City were linked with him, but Johnny Evans, and they're now finally linked with him. I know that Oxlade-Chamberlain looks like he's gonna depart, possibly for Liverpool, possibly for Chelsea. You've got they're talking about Kieran Gibbs leaving. I mean, obviously he's not going to be a big loss, but...
Well, Gibbs has joined West Brom today.
He's gone.
For $6 million, he's gone. Oxlade-Chamberlain has passed the medical at Liverpool, just waiting to agree personal terms.
So, I mean, where do they go? I mean, he's got 1 day. If Sanchez goes as well, he's got 2 players there that he definitely needs to replace in Sanchez and Oxlade-Chamberlain. Arguably 2 of their better players last season. Sanchez definitely. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I guess the difference between United and Arsenal in the last few seasons, obviously completely different clubs and circumstances, but Van Gaal just won the FA Cup. The news broke that he would not be kept on as manager. I think if a club was intent on winning something or having some success, then surely they should have done the same with Wenger. I know Ian Wright was on the press last night saying that he's got too much power at the club, and as long as he makes money for the club, then it'll stay in. So, hey, I don't know what's going on there really, but you'd have to say they're the ones out of the big 6 or the big 5 that are probably going to be at threat again this season of missing out, unless something dramatic changes.
Agree.
Cole Benjani to Man City, right? He was at Portsmouth, £9.5 million, which was quite decent money for him, for Benji. So I said, Benji, you've got to go. Man City want you. I like it here, boss. I'm happy. I went, no, you've got to go.
So, our final section of today's podcast, we're going to do a roundup of all things transfers this window. And as part of that, we're going to look at who we think is going to do well, our tops, and who's going to do not so well, our flops. So, Nick, I'm going to talk to you about this. What do you think? Highlights, lowlights so far of the window?
Yeah, so I've named 3 people that I think we should be looking out for, that I think that will do well, or certainly worth keeping an eye on. And I've also named 3 people that I think are not going to set the world alight in this year's Premiership,
i.e. the flops.
i.e. the flops.
And this will be a running feature, listeners, every week, using the football statistics website whoscored.com. We will be tracking the running totals of the average score that they give them, and there will be a winner and loser at the end of this season. So go on then, Nick, take us away with your tops first.
Yeah, so I think news broke earlier tonight, and in quite a sensational deal, to be fair, and how Paul Clement's done. Well, it's obvious how he has done this because of his Bayern Munich ties, but getting Renato Sanchez on loan just seems to me to be a match made in heaven, because the pressure will be off. They're a footballing side. He knows the manager. It's a 1-year loan deal with a 2 million down payment, so they're not going to lose a lot of money. I think the boy is super, super talented. At one point, I wanted him at United. So my first top and player to look out for, I think, is Renato Sanchez.
If it makes the deal, I guess that's the
If it goes through,
caveat. Yeah. Okay. Number 1, Sanchez. I'll make a note of that. Next.
My second top is my main man, Romelu Lukaku. And I think he's going to bang 30 goals plus. I think he'll get better and better. I think his all-round game will improve. We've already seen decent link-up play between him, Martial, Mkhitaryan, Pogba. I think that, seriously, this boy is... I always look at strikers now. Who could honestly beat Alan Shearer's record? Because I think it's pretty obvious that Wayne Rooney isn't. And I think there's two out there at the moment, Lukaku and Kane. And I think it generally is... It's a long race, but I think that's the race.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree on you with that one. And the third?
Third one, I mean, it's always difficult to pick a goalkeeper, because if you concede, you're going to lose points probably on this website. But I think Jordan Pickford's got a big future. I don't think the price tag has affected him one bit. He's come straight into number one at an ambitious club. They're playing Europa League football. They're going to be challenging for higher honours in the league. I don't think it's long before there are serious claims before this lad to take Joe Hart's spot as England number one.
Yeah, why not? I think for me, it's an obvious choice. I think he would. He's ready to take Joe Hart's spot. Right, so there's your tops. While we're on that subject, I'm going to list mine. All three of them play for rival clubs. First one, the Egyptian lad that Liverpool signed, Mo Salah, so the former Chelsea man. I think he's had a good start to the season, and I think he's going to chip in with goals this season. So watch out for him. Second, down at Arsenal, Lacazette. Now, I've been tracking him for the last few seasons down at Lyon. Think he is a natural-born goal scorer. And to some extent, I think he is going to be the one that keeps Arsenal afloat almost. At this time in the season, I don't see them signing a proper replacement for Sanchez or Oxlade if they leave. So yeah, I think he's going to get his fair share of goals purely because nobody else will. And the third one down at City is the new keeper they've got, Ederson. And I think we touched on this earlier, but I don't think he could do any worse than the last lad in Bravo. But actually, he looks, from what I've seen of him the last couple of games, he's looked a decent pair of hands, unlike the last lad. Go on then, Nick. Tell us your flops.
So, perhaps controversial. One of my first flop is Lacazette.
Oof.
I'm not so sure this man's the answer. I know he's been scoring goals in France.
Yep.
I think last season,
Lyon.
27.
Yep.
The year before, Zlatan got 50. If I always look at, if he was really that good, why were no other big teams look at him? Pardon Atletico Madrid, who tried to buy him despite not being able to buy people. So Real Madrid seem to always want to get rid of Benzema. Why was Lacazette not mentioned? Barcelona were not mentioned. Bayern Munich, Dortmund, PSG when they lost Zlatan. Why was Lacazette not mentioned there? United had never linked with him. Chelsea had never linked with him. I'm not sure this guy's the answer. And he was on the bench for the Liverpool game.
True, yeah, that was a strange one.
I just have a funny feeling that come the end of the season, if you look at his goals return, I don't think it's going to be too far away from what Olivier Giroud has produced for Arsenal. I think it'll be quite similar. I know they're different types of players, but I don't think he's the world-class striker that Arsenal fans thought they were buying.
Interesting. Second on your list of flops?
My second flop is Rooney. Not because I think... Yeah, I know.
Hold on.
Not because I think Wayne Rooney's a bad player. Purely, once I think Everton start getting into their flow and their best 11, I honestly don't see where Wayne Rooney plays. There's talk that they want to buy another striker. They're ridiculously linked to Costa, which is obviously not going to happen.
No.
But you would have thought for 45, 50 million that Sigurdsson, Gylfi Sigurdsson's going to be the number 10.
Yeah.
Wayne Rooney isn't a number 9, as he proved over the last couple of years, and Everton are in the market for a number 9, and there's already whispers coming out that Wayne Rooney probably wasn't Ronald Koeman's signing. So, look, I'm not saying Waz is a bad player, and I think if he does play, he'll rack up the goals and the points on this website, but I just don't think he's going to play, and come what may.
Interesting. And last on your flops?
Yeah, I mean this is probably a bit of a cheat as he's not part of the game, but I think Crystal Palace has probably made the worst sign of the summer so far in appointing Frank de Boer as manager.
Oh wow, big shout.
I think there's a fascination with Dutch total football, sexy football. There always has been.
Ever since Ruud Gullit's days, I guess.
Well,
in the Premier League, I mean.
Yeah, in the Premier League. Holland won a European Championship, I want to say 88. And they've won the same amount of international honours as England. Not one single chairman has gone, we want to play the England way. I don't see what the fascination is of playing it the Dutch way. And if you look at the Dutch record and their English record, there's not a lot in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a Man United podcast. We felt victim of that a couple of years ago with Van Gaal.
Yeah.
We based his success. We saw he won a Champions League in 1995 playing this total football.
Yeah.
And hired him. And I think Palace have done the same. They've gone for a Champions League winner in 1995 with a name, Frank de Boer, who's going to promise them sexy football at Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
And I don't have to list
the
Palace names. It just doesn't make sense to me.
That is a strange one.
Between him and Bilic is a racer who's at first out the door.
Yeah. Right, so I've got 3 flops, as did Nick. So the first one is the lad at West Ham, Arnautovic, brought in for big money, 25 million, I believe, from Stoke. I don't think he's ever had the greatest of attitudes. I just can't see this move working out. I think Bilic is a marked man as well, unfortunately, because he seems like a good guy and a club legend. But I just think there's something wrong at that club, and I don't think either of these guys can fix it. The next one on the list is actually another West Ham player. Currently, Joe Hart. With that defence, I'm not sure that he's got a leg to stand on, really. I mean, we tore him to ribbons first game of the season. He was just left completely exposed. So, yeah, I think he's going to concede a lot of goals. And the other one's a bit left field, but there's a bigger problem at Newcastle, I think. You touched on it earlier. They're a big club with still a championship squad. They haven't invested. I think the striker they've just bought from Stoke, Hosselu, couldn't even get a game at Stoke. I mean, this is a club we're saying couldn't get a game over Peter Crouch. I mean, I love Peter Crouch, but you know, he's more of a TV personality these days than a goal machine. So if you can't get in over him, I mean, what's that saying? But there you go. Joselu, no chance for me. Right, that brings us to the close of this week's podcast. So thanks for everyone who listened. We welcome questions, comments. Please leave these below at the video post. Our next edition will be after the Basel game on the 12th of September, where we will wrap up our start in the Champions League, our next league game, and the end of the transfer window. I'm sure there'll be many, many more topics to cover in that period as well. As always, thanks for your time and listening and your support, and we look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.